Let's move on to things we're looking for in this OU Arkansas State matchup. Ted, what stands out about Arkansas State's offense to you? A lot of mystery around that group coming into this game, but what are some things you're looking for from OU's defense in this one?
Well, we really got to control the line of scrimmage. Defensive line should have a really big day. You go back and you watch some of their stuff from a year ago. I don't know how similar it's going to look. A lot of the personnel has changed. They did a lot of quarterback run game stuff last year, a lot of snaps out of the pistol, a little bit of misdirection, but some quarterback run and stuff that was sprinkled in there. I don't know how much of that we're going to see. New quarterback last year was a real runner. Have to kind of see this year what their guy could do, but it's all going to start up front. If they can block us in the run game and in the pass game, they're going to have a chance to move the ball and score. If they can't block us up front, which this is where we're aiming to be, like to have the mismatch on the defensive line, we should be aggressive. We should be in the backfield a lot. I expect our defensive line to have a huge day in tackles for loss and sacks.
Yeah, and when you look at their offensive line, height and weight wise, look like a Power 5 team.
Yep.
Right? Height and
A
weight
lot of
wise.
Power
Now,
5 players on there.
Yeah, their center also, and I don't know how you factored this in, but he has a just elite mullet. I mean, elite. Go look at Jacob Byers' team photo. Just luscious flow with the mullet. But
usually translate well for offensive linemen.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
but it should almost be a combine category.
Just like, do you have a mullet? Yes or
check
no?
The mullet, yeah.
But yeah, you're looking for complete and utter dominance from the defensive line, right? We've heard about the competitive depth. You got a lot more bodies, play a lot of guys. And, that drop off, right, which really hasn't been there in training camp, right? The ones and twos have both played at a very high level. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for that rotation to essentially like all these guys playing at the same level. Now, you also want a couple guys to really start separating themselves, right? And being like, hey, these are our go-to pass rush guys. These are the guys that are disruptive. Hopefully a few guys emerge in this game when it comes to that. But yeah, it's all about just dominating the line of scrimmage, right?
That's it. Yeah, and Arkansas State's going to have a big improvement on their offensive line from a year ago. And, first drive, maybe they look okay. Second drive, our defensive line and edge guys should just continue to come at them in waves. And it's not going to take very long at all before you really start to wear those guys down. I mean, that's the way I envision it. And if that happens, as you go back further, linebackers, secondary players, you should have a trickle down effect, and all those guys should play much better as well.
Yeah. Now, if the Red Wolves, which by the way, just an awesome nickname, right? Red Wolves. If they can't get the running game going, the two guys to know are Jeff Foreman and Corey Rucker, 14 and 7. Those are guys that have made plays for them in the past, right? They look the part physically, and if all else fails, they're going to try to get the ball to 7 and 14. Mm-hmm. And that's just that's what I anticipate happening if they just can't get anything going in the run game.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those interesting things for a team like Arkansas State. How much are you really going to abandon what's going to be your bread and butter for the year, right? Some of your running game stuff, like you're going to try and win the game, but there comes a point to where hopefully that this is more of a practice, and I think they would stick with some traditional stuff maybe a little bit longer than they would if the game was a game tight and they have a chance to win it, which maybe I'm giving Oklahoma a little bit too much credit here, but I think they'll probably stick with the running game. But you're right. Like early, if there's a chance they're hanging around this thing, they're going to spread you out and try and attack some matchups instead of running right at the teeth of your team.
Yeah. Anything else you're watching for OU's defense?
I I will expect a couple of these wide receivers to make a play or two. Their backfield, Arkansas State's backfield is incredibly talented. I expect, for those guys to maybe create something, make a guy miss, spin off tackles. Like there's going to be some stuff like that happen. What we can't have is a guy miss a tackle and turn into a 50-yard gain. We can't have we can tolerate maybe a guy getting beaten on a competitive play to one of these receivers. We can't have free runners down the field. I'm just looking for the defense to avoid the critical mistakes.
Yeah.
So the other stuff's going to happen. I mean, they're not going to be perfect.
Don't let Oklahoma beat Oklahoma, right? How many times have we heard Venables say it?
There you go.
All right, looking at Arkansas State's defense, right, and what I'm looking for OU's offense. First of all, Arkansas State is a 4-2-5 defense. Now, they played some three-man front last season. They jumped into it against Ohio State in the second half. There were some stretches against Memphis that they did it, some stretches against James Madison, and they were awful at it. I mean, awful. I mean, just god-awful. So how much three-man front are they going to sprinkle in? I don't know. But when they get in it, I expect OU to gash them, just like all those teams did. Now, if you get into 12 personnel or 21, their nickel, which they call the star position, he bumps in, and Ted, my goodness, it just looks like traditional 4-3 defense. It would bring a smile to your face, my friend. But they're going to be undersized on the defensive line. Now, Micah Bland, the transfer from North Alabama, he's the one from a height and weight perspective. He checks the box, right? He's checking in 315, 318. But the rest of that group up front is going to be undersized. So I'm looking for Oklahoma's offensive line, right? This group of five who are going to be playing their first snap all together in a game, which is kind of insane when you think about it. But this group of five, this is going to be the first time they've ever played in a game together. I expect clear communication, no mental errors, right? And then I'm looking in the run game at those double teams on their bread and butter concepts, right? I'm looking at all the variations of counter we saw Levy call last year, all the inside zone variations, right? Split zone, zone insert that was so successful with Braden Willis being kind of that chess piece. I'm looking for the double teams and the assignments to all be clean on that. That's what, and if it's clean and they're going the right places, they're going to move these guys off the ball. They are. So that's what I'm looking for, is that offensive line, who I think is very talented. I'm looking for them to move some people, right? And with what Arkansas State showed a year ago, they're not going to do anything overly complicated defensively, right? It's now I would anticipate them doing some one gap movement, right? They're not just going to sit there in a base structure and let OU just maul them, right? They're going to try to change it up. From what I watched from a year ago, crossfire is kind of their blitz of choice, but you got to handle all that stuff and you got to move people off the football. That's the number one thing I'm watching for, Ted.
Yeah. And, I hope that happens. And you brought up a good point, like with the counter stuff and the insert stuff. Like one of the things to watch is like, we don't have a Braden Willis this year, but who's gonna fill that role, and what type of play are we going to get out of them? I mean, because Braden Willis was excellent at all that stuff last year, and can we get to that same level or get close to that? That's because, philosophically, with all the running stuff that Levy wants to do, that's a critical part of it.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, this is kind of building on the offensive line conversation. running backs should have a lot of one-on-one situations with their nickel and their safeties, right? If you get things blocked up, there's going to be free hitters. That's football. But there's no one that is accounting for those guys in some of these concepts. Eric Gray did a much better job of making those guys miss a year ago. Can Major and Tawi and Barnes, Hicks, whoever, can they turn those situations where it's them versus the free hitter, make a miss, and turn a 7-yard run into a 57-yard run? Do we have guys that can do that? Right? In Arkansas State, they got an experienced secondary. Their safeties have played a lot of ball. And they're going to come up and they got nothing to lose. They're going to be flying in run support. They're going to be trying to make a name for themselves, right? It's the biggest game they're going to play all season long. So can the group of backs that we've got with all the depth, right? Do we have any like game-changing guys that can make those guys miss and really turn these into some explosive runs? I'm very excited to watch that.
I am too. I expect it to start off by one of those safeties trying to make a name for themselves, and they're probably going to pick the wrong guy because Tawi Walker's going to make him end up on SportsCenter. Now, the first time he may take a 7-yard run and turn it into a 9-yard run whenever he, takes his face mask right through one of those guys' chests. But it only takes one of those as a safety to come up a little bit differently for the rest of the game. So I think Tawi's going to probably take one for the team early, and everyone else is going to capitalize off the safeties being a little bit slower to come down to the run game.
Yeah, I hear you. Now I've got two more things that I'm going to have my eye on offensively. You're playing inferior competition, right? I want to see this offense operate the way it's supposed to operate, right? And I know that a lot of people looked at last year like, hey, where's the intermediate passing game? Can we develop that part of this offense? Well, the philosophy of this offense is run it down a team's face, force them to commit more to the run, and throw it over their head for long touchdowns. Like at its core, that's what this offense is all about. So that's what I'm looking for. Efficient, violent run game. And then when Arkansas State, and they were very aggressive in coverage last year, right? A lot of 1, a shocking amount of 0. They will give you the opportunities. And there's no doubt in my mind, Lebby's going to take those shots. Dillon Gabriel, he's got to connect on those. He's got to be better with his deep ball accuracy. We have to have wide receivers that can run by corners from Arkansas State. If you go back and watch Ohio State's game with them last year, Marvin Harrison Jr. looked bored with how many times he just ran by him over and over and over again. It was almost comical to watch. We have to have some guys that can do that, whether that's Dillon Gabriel in at quarterback, Jackson Arnold in at quarterback. I don't care. Run it and then run past them and score from far, right? How many times have we heard Lebby say it? Right. So that's what I'm looking for, this offense to just function and operate the way that it's supposed to operate.
Yeah. Well, my hope this year is that our offensive line gets to a point where, I mean, the amount of confidence, swagger, whatever you want to call it, that group had a couple of years ago, where they're standing out there on the line of scrimmage and they just know that they're about to maul the shit out of the defensive line. I used to get annoyed with the 15-yard penalties because it was a guarantee that every game there's going to be a 15-yard penalty from one of the offensive linemen. But if that attitude comes around, I think that's going to be like the missing link that is finally going to click at some point whenever they look at each other and say, we're pretty damn good.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Last thing, Dillon Gabriel, Jackson Arnold, whoever's in at quarterback, they're going to have some opportunities to keep the football when they're reading the end man on the line of scrimmage, right? When they're leaving that guy unblocked. They crash hard at end in those concepts and basically dare the quarterback to keep the ball. So we could see those guys take off. Maybe Levy will just call some like give plays where it's not an option for him to keep it. But there's going to be opportunities with the way, at least with the way that they showed how they wanted to play it a year ago. Maybe they play it differently this season, but I mean, they really do not, they don't show a lot of respect for the quarterback keeping the ball and using his legs. So those opportunities will be there.
I'm interested to see how Oklahoma plays it. Are they going to do it more early to get their guys reps at it and have teams thinking about it? Or are they going to not do it a whole lot early? I mean, they're going to do it some, but just a little amount of volume there and maybe have it be a bigger part of what they do in some critical games. I don't know. That's the long game chess part of it that we'll have to watch and see how it happens.